Back, breaking news this weekend as Customs and Border Patrol released detailed guidelines on the U.S.'s new tariff exemptions for certain products important to America, including semiconductors, electronic devices, AI servers, computers, smartphones. The president allowing tariff exemptions to the 145% levy on China. But the items are still subject to the initial 20% tariff related to the president's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That's IEEPA. That's federal law that grants the president broad authority to regulate international commerce related to national security and emergencies. Joining me now with more in the Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the White House Deputy Chief of Staff on Policy, Stephen Miller. Stephen, it's great to see you this weekend. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And I called it breaking news because Border Patrol released this on Friday night. But I guess it's not such breaking news from your standpoint because you were targeting specific items from day one. Walk us through these exemptions, Stephen, and what they mean.
Yes, this is just another great example of how President Trump had a detailed plan from the beginning that's being executed exactly as directed. And unfortunately, some in the media are deliberately misportraying that plan. The original 20% IEEPA, that's the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, for China poisoning our citizens with fentanyl, that 20% rate is and continues to be applied to all imports from China. When the president issued his reciprocal tariffs, our government at the time specifically said that chips and semiconductors, which are critical components of our national security, were going to be dealt with through a separate commerce authority known as a 232. That was always the plan because those components are so essential to our national security. We need to have a separate process for dealing with how to reshore those essential industries. When the tariff rate went up to the full rate of 125 on top of the 20, it was necessary to publish a more detailed list from Customs and Border Protection explaining the rates and how they're applied. There are no exemptions. Everyone pays at least the 20%, and these particular components are being put through a separate process controlled by the Department of Commerce, which is the 232. So this is a sophisticated, elegant, detailed plan to deal with Chinese economic aggression against the United States.
Yeah, and look, I still expect, semiconductor companies, Apple, these companies that are exposed to this to trade higher in the stock market on Monday. I still, even though this was the plan from day one, but obviously markets are reacting to all of this. Stephen, what can you tell us about this 90-day period where President Trump is negotiating with our allies and on trade? Should we expect deals with countries like Japan and South Korea and India soon?
Well, as President Trump has said, he's dispatched his team, Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Jameson Greer, to have conversations with these countries and to explain to them their egregious trade abuses, how they've manipulated their currencies, how they have illegally subsidized their industries, and how they balloon the trade deficit. And that's going to lead to a bilateral process with each and every one of these countries. And I'm not going to prejudge that result. But the 90-day pause before the tariff rates snap back gives us an opportunity to have that conversation with each of these countries and to deal with these long-running, severe, and systemic abuses, while at the same time, and very importantly, focusing all of our attention and the attention of the entire international community on how China has distorted the entire global trading system through decades of intellectual property theft, trademark theft, copyright theft, industrial espionage, currency manipulation, illegal subsidization of critical industries, targeted dumping to destroy core manufacturing capacity in other countries so that they cannot protect and defend themselves in a time of national emergency. These are state-led policies from China that require redress, and the only scandal is that it took so long for us to finally have a president in Donald Trump who will protect and defend America from these abuses, while every other president, Democrat and Republican, allowed China to plunder us to a degree that was so savage and so total, it honestly eclipses the imagination.
It really does. And why? I mean, I cover this every single day and put a spotlight on the bad behavior, and that's being nice about it, of communist China. Why is it that we allow them to roll over America and undermine this great country every day?
and they've done it for decades. It is shameful that core elements of our industrial base, our medical base, our manufacturing base, our pharmaceutical base, our defense base, our electronic components, our chips, our critical minerals, that all of the things that power our country, we've allowed those supply chains to be centered in China, to give China the ability to exert that kind of control over the rest of the world through these illicit means. That's unthinkable. President Trump, history will record that the actions President Trump has taken in recent days were the beginning of saving the West from complete economic domination by another power.
But look, Stephen, during COVID, we learned that they may not send these critical elements to America. During COVID, you remember when the propaganda, the state media sent out a tweet saying, well, maybe we won't send the critical components, underlying components of prescription drugs to America right now. Let them get sick. Then suddenly that tweet was gone and you won't be able to find it anymore. But why wouldn't China make the decision not to send any of that, the critical rare earth minerals, right now?
Well, the United States also has considerable and profound economic leverage over China. First and most importantly, we underwrite the entire country. All of its development, all of its industrialization, all of its economic subsidies, all of those. When you see those photos of what cities in China looked like 10, 20 years ago, barren, desolate, and now these glittering skyscrapers, who do you think's paid for all of that? We did. We paid for literally all of it. So China, and we have other leverage in terms of, I don't want to get into it here, but there are many things that are essential to China's security that they need from the United States. Now, so China would be very wise to pursue the path of de-escalation.
Do you believe China was selling treasuries this week?
I don't want to comment on that. All I want to say is that America is in the best position under President Trump to dominate the economic future because of how we are unleashing deregulation, exploring and opening American energy, including trillions of dollars in clean coal, and how we are on the verge of passing a tax bill that will provide economic certainty and make America into the most desirable place on planet Earth to shore jobs, invest, expand, hire, and grow. This is an economic strategy. Deal with China's abuses, deregulate, explode American energy production, create the most favorable tax system for American development on the face of the earth. That is the recipe for radical American success, Maria.
Stephen, it sounds fantastic. And thank you for your leadership on the border as well and stopping all of that fentanyl from coming in. Great to have you this morning. White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller.
Thank you.